Aha, there it is. Sometimes my phone doesn't. My phone. I don't know why. I just want to. I'm not actually listening to music, but sometimes I stand here with headphones on, just so that I don't hear anything. Sometimes I just wear headphones just for the fun of wearing headphones. Not just for the fun of wearing headphones, but because sometimes it's just a little bit too much. I hear a little bit too many things, and I find that a little bit irritating. And when I focus on my screen, I sometimes did that when I was living in South Africa, because there were a lot of students, and when you didn't want that somebody comes and talks to you, you just wear headphones. You don't actually have to play music, because sometimes it's a bit too distracting. And that's of course one of my practices, which you may call listening, right? I'm just gonna create my own names now for the stuff that I'm doing. I just create my own things, right? So I look at the world and I see what works. So when I realize that the way I've been having relationships doesn't work, maybe I find myself in a relationship at the moment, and I have an interest to maintain that relationship and maybe try loving once in my life and really open up to the person, like completely. Then I might take this whole relationship thing a bit more serious. And see it as something right? You can see a relationship as something that you have because it's a necessity, right? You can have relationships because you feel like without them you can't do anything. See, that's what I'm talking about. So there was something I first want to look at. Now, let's just go through this together, okay? I released my newest album on streaming, which might or might not be the last album that I release on streaming. And it says, hello, Christopher. I'm using a distributor to distribute my music. It's a service. It's actually fairly cheap, but anyway, they write to me, thanks for uploading music to blah blah blah. Yeah, you have to find your own. This is regarding cycling through habits. It's actually not my recent album anymore. It's just the last one I submitted to them. So all the rest of my music is going to be on Bandcamp, by the way. Okay. We have reviewed your release and found a few issues we need you to have a look at before we can deliver it to the stores. Your music will not be released, it says, until these issues are resolved. Please address the following. Now it says track, dragons and rats, yeah? And then it says not approved content. And then it says the content uploaded to Amuse is curated. Oh no, I said. to meet the music store's guidelines. We do not approve audiobooks, podcasts, or radio shows. The next, covers of classical compositions and content that violates our terms of use. Now, this is for a couple of my songs. Also Fapism and also Me the German. And now the question is, why don't they want to release my music? And I think that, I use their service. It's fairly cheap. It's 20 euros per year. And in a very short matter of time, I've already created 27 or 26 albums or something. It's a ridiculous amount of music that I've put out there. But I can't help it, right? I'm not about perfection. I'm about just taking my emotions and doing something with them. And when I'm done with the emotion, I bring it out, right? I show it. It's like, oh, wow. And then I give it to the world because, that's my potential income, right? Which is potential that is going to be, or is already, the source of my income, actually. It always starts slowly. So I can't help it that most people don't do it like this. You have people like NF, super important guy, right? In his own world, of course. And to everyone who clings to him, he's super important. To me, he's a guy who makes music. Yeah, and he's like, I don't know how long he works on this, but he also has, I don't know, hundreds of people involved to make an album and then music videos, and then he has to release it on a special date to have the best effect. And I just put it out there because what am I holding on for? Because he could give way more, but he decides not to because he's selfish. And when I have something to give, I simply give it. It's not all for free, but on Bandcamp you can listen to my music. You don't actually have to buy it, right? So if you're smart, you can even find ways to just download them from Bandcamp, probably, right? I mean, it's not like... technically what's on the internet is freely available if you find a way to get to it. That's what it's about, isn't it? You just have to see what's available and if you can get it. So if you manage to get my music from Bandcamp, then, go for it. But if you want to appreciate what I've done and you also work with it, then just pay the price that I said, this is like a gesture of goodwill or something. You can also pay more, that's up to you. But my music is made to work with it. Anyway, so they had all these things that they said, this is why they disapprove of my content and why my album will not be released. And then I challenged that because I looked at, well, the first two are fairly easy. It's not an audiobook, it's not a podcast, and it's not a radio show. It's also not the cover of a classical composition, because it's just unique thingy. And then it says content that violates our terms of use. Now, previously, I would probably have just let that slide and say, oh yeah, that's so shit. But this time I said, I'm going to look at, I actually don't know what it says in the email, but I have a feeling I've won. Or who's won, I don't know. Truth has won. Because they already tried to take a piss on me once before. There was this very weird incident. I was releasing albums like, like drops. And one day I got 25 emails and I had from them and the same email 25 times or something. And then it said later, oh yeah, sorry, but it resounded like they did this on purpose. Because there is a human behind that. They can just, if you keep sending them stuff, they'll get a bit pissed and then. So maybe it's also a sign, slow down, right? Give them time. So I was looking through this, what am I allowed to say and what am I not allowed to say? And then I came to the point, that's also what I did once with my master's degree. They wanted to deny me that. Because they wanted to force me to hand in, normally I would write a dissertation, and it said that also in the study program. But they also wanted me to submit 2 scientific papers. And I already hated writing the dissertation, so to write these papers, because I know how the scientific system is built, right? Students write papers, universities get money, and the professor who supervised the student gets the credit, right? And so he's an asset. So the professor is an asset to the university if he gets students to write papers, because generally the professor has to produce a lot of papers. And so a lot of professors, they use students so that their name is on the publication, and then they get credit for it. A lot of times they actually don't care what the research is about or what the message is. They just want that you get the paper published. And so when that happened, and I wrote my dissertation, and then they tried to get me to also write these papers, I just looked at all the legal stuff from the university, what actually is required to grant me my certificate. And then it said that for the master's degree I had been doing, that it's either a dissertation or a minimum of 2 submitted scientific papers. And then I had them by the walls, and then I wrote to them and I said, yeah, well, but I also waited until I said, here, these are your rules. This is it, right? I've given you what I could, that's it. And because a university is an institution, they're going to suck you dry, right? I mean, you are working for them. Universities are institutions, and you as a student buy their product. Well, everything you learn in university, you could also teach yourself. You just need discipline. Because university didn't really discipline me. Life did that, and nature did that. And so what you need in a good relationship is discipline. The discipline to love no matter what. That is the kind of mentality you need in a relationship. I'm talking from man space now, right? In my case, because I seem to be fairly strong in terms of love, I have a lot like whoosh, no matter what anybody does, I've been punched in the face and I still love the guy. It's like, okay, stay away from me, but I still love you, okay? And even within family, right? I mean, people have done crazy shit with me. Just yesterday. Yeah, I had the feeling there was some issues in the family, and I just went to check, and suddenly everything like exploded into my face. And at the end of it, someone was dragging me across the floor to get me out of their apartment, and I was just motionless. I just did nothing. Because if somebody wants to treat you like this, if somebody screams at you, you have to understand the place where they're coming from. And sometimes it's really annoying because people scream at each other, and then that's the thing, they scream at each other. You should just let the other person do the screaming, and then take whatever they had and just do something else with it. Walk it into nature or something, right? Or write a book about it. But don't argue with them. When they're screaming, let them scream. I mean, I've had someone punch me on the chest a couple of times. It's very hard to stay relaxed when somebody does that. Because I could have seen this situation really exploding. Right? It's like, okay. Yeah. But I'm far from being a violent man. I know I could. If I really felt like it. If I really felt like punching somebody in the face would help him. But the question is, only a weak man needs to use violence. Because if you ain't afraid of the other person, then why do you have to harm them, right? Because if you punch somebody, it's like making sure that he stays in place, right? But I ain't gonna stay in place, right? You can punch me in the face. I'm just gonna keep walking. You know, I'm not really interested in having a tussle with you. Unless you're my wife, of course. And then I wanna have a tussle. And then she might be afraid of that. You know, that's just the general point, right? You need a bit of madness in order to survive emotional warfare. Because if you're a pussy about it, it's gonna destroy you, my friend. You have to be a bit mad about it, like, yeah, like Willy Wonka or something, right? It's like, you just have to be a bit mad about it. And that's just all there is to it. Because if you're too weak, love's gonna tear you to shreds. I mean, that just brings me to that movie Her. Her with Joaquin Phoenix. And the first relationship that is being described in that movie is he has this beautiful woman that reminds me a bit of mine. She's like, I love you. I love you so much. I want to kill you. I want to kill you because I love you so much. It's like a cat, like, but the cat is like still, it's a bit love, right? So sometimes you actually love someone so much you just want to fight with them. Or maybe you just don't have the courage to do that. And so, because how do you want your relationship to be? Your wife, your marriage, your husband? Do you want them to be like, I'm afraid to hurt you? Or do you want to be more like, oh hey, let's do this? Because if you want it to be more like, let's do this, then you can't be a pussy about anything anybody does. Because love hurts sometimes, and sometimes you have to take a hit for another person. So I'm going to get to what I'm trying to say. Right now it says prohibited use, because that was the part I was looking for. I actually had to go at least halfway through the document before I found what they're real, like when they can, in any way that is, or has the person being unlawful. So prohibited use is, I'm back to use now, oh yeah. You may not in any way use our services for any unlawful purpose or for the following reasons. Blah, 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 infringing or fraudulent, I didn't do that. To harm or attempt to harm any other person in any way, didn't do that either. Contain hateful, racist, or inflammatory material. Yeah, what is that? You know, hateful or racist. A lot of people are actually being racist on, you know, by accident. It's not by accident, actually on purpose, but people just act like they're not being racist, right? Sometimes you look down on people, it's racist. Because what's being racist is already looking at other people like they're different. That's already being racist. I mean, you're looking at animals and say they're different. It's already being racist. Because to be a racist is that you look at life and you see only races, right? When I look at life, I see life. I don't see you're different, yeah. Because in the end, it's all life. So racism is a division. Yeah, so when you look at your wife or your husband and you think, you're different, you're an asshole, well, they're probably exactly like you are. Otherwise you wouldn't get so angry at them. And your anger is actually, you fail, you know, you don't know how to love them. That's, you know, because you're stuck. You're stuck down here. You have to get into the heart. If you're stuck in your root chakra, then you're stuck in hate. And then all the energy that comes into you will just leak out of you because of your trauma. So if you want to heal that to get to the heart, then you can express yourself more fully. Because then all the anger just, yeah, comes out of your throat in a different way. It's just, if you, yeah, doesn't matter. Promote discrimination based on race, religion, nationality. Yeah, this is based. Yeah, okay, but promote discrimination. That means you're actually telling others to discriminate others. If you're promoting discrimination, but I can still discriminate, right? Because, I mean, what is rap music? You know, that sounds very nice, but just listen to rap music. They're constantly people having a go at each other, right? It's like people talking about Eminem, rapping about him, you know, I've done that. Right now I've rapped about NF. Sometimes, you know, I take a go at politicians. Sometimes I have a go at. You could say that's discrimination, isn't it? Based on race, religion, nationality, disability, or sexual orientation. I mean, disability. What did Eminem do with Christopher Reeves, right? He was constantly having a piss on him just because he liked how the name rhymed. And maybe he actually, oh yeah, the reason he was having a go at him because he wanted to be Superman, right? He actually envied Christopher Reeves, so he honored him. But he also made fun of him because he couldn't be Superman. Because I know Eminem for a fact liked a lot of comic books, right? And then it says promote, advocate, or assist in any illegal activity, threaten, harass, upset or alarm any other person or invade their privacy. First of all, how can I invade somebody else's privacy? I mean, unless I'm really there where they are. Impersonate any person. Like, why is that even forbidden? I mean, everybody should know if I'm the guy or not. Alright, parodies and tributes. It's like, what is that even? Oh yeah, tribute to someone. Okay, so this is what happened with them. So they said, I'm not going to release this. And then I answered them and I said, good day, sir, madam. You have to be professional about this. If you send them back something very angry, you have to know what you're talking about. So when I sent my email to the dean of the university, and I told him, hey, listen, I'm not going to write those papers. I already knew the certificate was on its way to me, right? The certificate was already on its way to me. And I waited. And when I got that email, because for some reason I still wanted the certificate. I don't know why. Maybe it was just to complete the thing. You know, I did what they wanted. They said you passed. And then they wanted me to do more things. And then I looked at the statutes and it said, well, you don't have to do that. So I was building my case. You get that? I was building my case because I was about to stand trial, you could say. So I was building my case. I was looking for clues, what I could say, what I would do. So when I'm sometimes in a situation, like what happened to me yesterday with my family here, that I just went to sit with them because they were sick, and then they started to shout at me like the worst thing. I mean, I just sat there, said nothing. I was just gonna say, you know, my brother was like full in my face. He was like, you are like this, and then he really got into it, and he really started screaming about anything. It didn't matter what he said. What mattered was that he could scream without hurting anybody. And you could really see that he actually really enjoyed this. And I was just sitting there and he was just like, wah! Because normally you cannot do this. Sometimes you're so angry you don't know what to do with yourself. You want to scream at somebody, but if you do that, they're gonna scream back at you, and then you have emotional warfare. Then it's like da 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 da, and then da 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 da, and this is going to continue until one of you just says, "All right, what is really winning? How can I win this now?" Because you still want to win, but you have to be a bit smart, because sometimes people are just like this. How can you focus on what's the best step now if you're like, because you cannot see the way through right now. You're just, everything's red, everything. And so if you want to see the situation a bit like this, you can actually say, hey, you know what? I really love you. And then your partner says, what? Wow, why did you say that? And then you say, because I really love you. No, you don't mean this. And you say, Oh yeah, I really mean this. But of course, that only works. You really have to mean it because now they might just really start screaming. Because now they think, okay, I'm gonna prove that he doesn't love me. I'm gonna prove it to him. I'm gonna be really nasty. I'm gonna keep silent. I don't know. I'm gonna not cook for him. And all you have to do is just love them. Because now you're together anyway, so you just have to stick it out, alright? Yeah. So, what doesn't work in a relationship is to do what I do with these institutions. I mean, you are talking about emotional beings here. One reason maybe they sent me these. Uh, One reason maybe they sent me these emails is because they're desperate or something, right? Because maybe they're not making as much money as they hope they would. Or they think, well, for 20 euros, that guy is sure giving us a lot of work. But that's not my problem because they decided on the price, um, which is actually quite cheap for all of that. But they probably thought, yeah, he's gonna release one album. Now it's 27. All right. Okay. Good day, sir, madam. So that was quite. Could you be more specific as to why my release has been rejected? It is neither an audiobook, podcast, or radio show, nor a cover of classical compositions. I also do not violate your terms of use, and now I put that in there. I took it from them. I said, my music deals with topics that are relevant within society. It aims to help young men to deal with depression and to inform them about the side effect of pornographic usage for their sexuality and life in general. My music does have an intense touch, I agree, but it is far from being discriminating for the sake of discrimination. I discriminate pornography for sure, because I know how it is like to be addicted to those videos. In case you want to have no part in this, then that is your call. Cheers, Christopher. You see, that's very, very professional. It's not at all angry, very different from emails I used to send. And now I got a response and said, hi, Christopher. Thank you for clarifying this. We'll proceed to review the final details of your release. Best regards. Okay. So the first email I got was more like, hey Christopher, thanks for your email. If we need any more information, we'll be in touch. Otherwise, the update will be made and the release delivered in 3 to 5 working days. Thanks, great. And now somebody else, you see, that's the very weird thing. But nobody else, and she sounds much more happy, friendly. Hi Christopher, thank you for clarifying this. We'll proceed to review the final details of your release. Best regards. And now, your release has been approved. So the question is, do I have to say something about this now? Hey, this is something great. Because now you can actually respond to this. You can actually, the people always say, show some love, right? Grace and Romina. Okay. I'm sorry for saying that. All right, sorry, I just had to quickly do this for whatever reason. It's very interesting because I have my screen here. You can see me looking at something. This is actually, so just looking at myself sometimes while I'm talking. It's actually quite an interesting thing because it shows me sometimes something about myself. And so when you find yourself in the middle of a fight and somebody starts screaming, then how do you deal with that? Well, how can you deal with it? That's the question. How can you deal with it? And the answer would be relax. Learn to relax. Because when somebody's in a place of fear right now, they'll just start shouting at you. So what can you do about it? You relax. Because what a lot of people do, they get sucked into the other person's fear and into the other person's anger, but that just amplifies it. And then sometimes all you have to do is accept this is the way it is right now. And so sometimes what we really need is to slow down a little. Because, yeah, something that, I really want to love, right? I mean, I'm just saying that because I mean it. But I also already know how to love. But what I had to learn, in some ways maybe, right? What I had to learn is that love takes time. And that is really something that is very frustrating. But now you also have to realize that you are not alone. In this. It's not just you. It's not just you. It's not just you. It's not just about you loving someone. It's about you opening up to love, and then to also realize that, all right, maybe you are the one that already knows how to love. Well, love is patient, is it not? And if love is patient, then you have to be patient. But you also have to know when to act. And this is a very, very complicated thing, right? To know how to act, when to act. Sometimes you have to know to be silent. So your relationship, there's always one of you who's stronger in this, is what I believe. There's always one who knows a bit better how to love, yeah? And now the question is, who is that? Like, are you that? Or are you not that? Are you the one that can love this woman or man? Because you seem to say that. Some people, I talk to them, they say they're the strong one. But they don't want to be strong for another person. So how do you say that you're the strong one if you decide not to be strong. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're the strong one, then you're the strong one. No matter what. And then you have to accept responsibility for the strength. And sometimes it's the woman that has to be strong. And sometimes it has to be the man that is strong. And so it's about taking responsibility for your own strength. Because you love someone, and then you say, I'm going to take care of that love, and I'm going to help you to open up to me. But somebody has to take responsibility for the love, otherwise it's just going to wither away. Sometimes people don't want to love because they just think they have to be selfish. Yeah, do you think being selfish helped me to produce all this beautiful content, if you want to see it as that? I see it as that. And that's what counts, right? I see this as beautiful. And that's for me what matters. So I can stand here, and although I have been in this house here for a couple of years, and I've been treated like junk sometimes, and there's a lot of stuff going on emotionally that I seem to be able to withstand more than anyone I ever met. Because most people, they just say, they say love, but what do they mean? Like, what do they mean when they say it? There's some people say love, but they seem to mean something else. Because you can only, when you say love, you speak from here. That's where you are. But some people say love and they speak from down there, which is their root chakra. So what I realized is that love is most of all a feeling. A feeling. And that is what it is. And so when I'm working on these images, I'm looking for a feeling in this, in my heart, in my anger, right? Because yesterday I felt really, you feel used when you let somebody shout at you. A question, can you take it? Can you take it? Right. Are you able to take it? Or are you going to add to their frustration that they think they can't love or they're afraid to love? What are you going to do? Well, what's this? Sometimes things are a bit sketchy. Like sometimes you don't really know where you stand. And that's often my position. Oh man. So the point is, sometimes we say we want to love, but we don't know how, right? And the question is, will you manage to figure it out? Or will you stop at I don't know how? Because what I learned is that every word that somebody speaks is an expression of how they feel. And that's why when I talk about the language of emotion, then that is what it is. We think we use words and then we lie or whatever, but the truth is always, in that sense, you could say that lies don't exist. Because we always say the truth. The problem lies with people giving too much credit to what they hear. Because what they hear might be, right, if you are in fear, and I say to you, I love you, your fear is going to turn it around and say, he just says that, he doesn't mean it. This is how fear works. It just distorts everything. So you say, I love you, but your partner doesn't hear that. Your partner says she's going to, what your partner hears is he or she is going to betray me. Because that's the topic they have, That's the topic every human that fails to love has. It's the topic of separation. Because you've been, in a way, separated when you came here. Separated in which way? Because you were a part of all of it. You're still a part. Only you were all of it. And then you get pushed into this thing that has boundaries. And then your whole world evolves around only this. And if you always get sucked into the outside, you forget who you are on the inside. And when you remember who you are on the inside, well, then it's going to get interesting. Because when you remember who you are on the inside, then whatever happens on the outside is just something happening. Does that make sense? Well, to me it does. So somebody can come and scream at me, and I'll just take it as an expression of love or something, right? But if I would re-listen to the words, or I would listen to them from a place of fear, I would, yesterday, my brother was like top of his lungs, like, rah, 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 rah. He was just screaming, and then he got really into it, and he was just screaming, like really screaming, like, rah. And I know sometimes we really need that. But to get to that place is also very scary. It's like, oh my God, I just did that. Did I just do this? Yes, you did, my friend. You did just scream at me at the top of your lungs in your own home, and everything's fine, right? Nothing happened, but you just really had to let go of this. And so how can somebody really hate you if they can do this with you? And if they can manage to scream at you and say all these things, and there's no consequence, right? There's still only love coming. Then at one point they can simply feel safe about loving you. But I still feel like it's a very, very difficult thing. It's a very difficult thing to do that. But how difficult is it really? How difficult is it really? Because when you really love and you say, I want to love and I'm going to love, then how difficult is it really to simply love someone, no matter what? Well, if you really say you love and you also then love, actually not difficult at all. But when you say it, you also have to mean it, if you know what I mean, right? Because just saying that, no, that's not, oh wow, You see, that's what I mean. I'm going through different kinds of versions of this image. You've seen me working on GIMP before. And then I take a layer and I put it on top, and I just create a kaleidoscope. Because I'm looking for an emotion in here, something that speaks to me specifically. I like the word specifically, specifically. And then I shift that around, and suddenly it's, oh. I actually have an idea. Because I don't know who's going to run in on this one. Also, make sure to save it, right? To save how you felt. Yeah, I have to save this. You have to save how you feel about the person in yourself. You have to save the love in a kind of a treasure chest in your heart. That's where you save it. You keep the love safe, and no matter what comes at it, right? This is what this is about. I'm in my strong place, so you can't get to me. All right, I'm going to do it like this. You see, it's so crazy. I just want to go to the toilet. I mean, really. And now I'm thinking of ways how to make this a better experience for you. Because I'm gonna let this running. And I don't know how long it takes. Be right back. Take your time. To come into my space. Oh yeah, and then of course I have to go to the window capture, not this one. Oh, that's interesting. Of course. Okay. Wow, what is this? I have no idea how this is sounding. Yeah, sometimes it's a little bit confusing. What one is supposed to do when it comes to love, right? So there are no actual rules. So this is now an image. And you could say love has no rules. And that also means that every couple out there has to figure out their own language of emotion. I mean, sure, if I spend time with people, I know what they're saying. Do I have to hear it? Not sure. I mean, I don't have to hear anything. All right. Okay. I don't have to hear what somebody has to say. But what does that mean? It's basically what everybody does. Because we're always saying these things on the inside. But sometimes we want to feel powerful, right? I mean, we all know this. You all know this. Sometimes you want to control people with the love you give them. This is so stupid. So you're holding back on the love because you think if I give them too much, they don't like me anymore. So the question is, who really wants your love in the way that you want to give it? And I believe there's probably just like one person out there who actually wants exactly what you have to give. One person. That's my experience. Everybody else they don't really want what you have. They just want your penis. Or they want something else from you. Everybody else just wants something. You see, I'm often wondering I actually wanted to give that a different name. Because I call this emotional warfare, right? Emotional warfare. Emotional warfare. And something with trust. Sometimes the name is kind of stuck. Emotional warfare needs trust. Sometimes the words are a bit hesitant. That says neds. I should say needs. Needs trust. Yeah. And somebody who actually understands the dance between the masculine and the feminine. And we can just see it in the state humanity is in right now. That there is a fight between the masculine and the feminine. It's like the rational and then the emotional. Men fail to understand the emotions of women, or so they say.
Actually not true. They don't want to understand them. Because women don't understand men. And this is like this ping pong game that's being played. I don't know what you mean. And then the other one says, I also don't know what you mean. It's like children playing in a sandpit. This is the relationships that I see even in my parents. It's like, they're just being like children. Like really stupid. They don't have this. I look at it from the outside. They just like to play their little games. It's like, I give you love, but only if you love me. This is what they're playing. It's like they really play hide and seek all the time. But if you're seeking, then at one point maybe you should find something. But some people, they don't even seek. They just want to be found, right? But the problem is, if you play hide and seek, some people, they don't even want to be found. They don't want to be found. And this is why they're hiding all the time. Their loving nature. Because what is you? You don't want to be found. Why? Because you're afraid of love. Because you think love hurts. Yeah, it does. And so do a lot of things, right? Growing hurts. There are growing pains. And you will realize when your heart begins to grow, holy shit. That feels like dying. Because what is death? It's birth. Right? It's like, alright. I get it. Maybe I have to change. Yeah, maybe. Because life is always changing. But at the same time, it also stays the same. Right? Life is always changing, but at the same time, now hear this, it stays the same. Because life is always life. That never really changes. But the way life looks like might change. So when you think a relationship should be a certain way because of what you've been taught by your parents, then you're going to have a lot of obstacles to overcome. To understand that maybe what your parents were teaching you was more like negative examples in the sense that, oh, that's what they've been doing and that's how they failed to communicate all this time. So maybe I'll try doing something else. And that's basically my method. Some people, they say, you always have to do everything different. You always, that's what my brother said to me yesterday, you always have to be special. You always have to be different. But it's not that I am. I just accept it. I don't do the things because I have to be different. I do them because I feel like it's necessary. Because in that sense, I see these things. And I turned out to be different in many ways. And so I started to take responsibility for these things. Where everybody just closes their hearts and they say, now I don't love you anymore. I say, I still love you. And then they say, but I hate you anyway. And then you say, but I still love you. And then they say, but I hate you anyway. And then I say, but I still love you. And then they say, oh, please love me more. And I say, love yourself. I hate you. This is how it goes. You have to work through that until you come to the place for both of you where both of you can say, oh, well, I actually love that guy. It's fucking amazing. Yeah. But I also get to this point where I say, I don't want to do this anymore. I hate it. And I think, but what's the point? No. I don't want to have these fights all the time. I don't want to have all these fights. I don't want to have all these fights. What I want is peace and quiet. But sometimes people are just outrageous. You know, sometimes people are so tense, all I have to do is sit down next to them and they like, because that's what love does. And that's what people have to understand. Love pushes emotions out. But if nobody loves, because everybody's too selfish to love, then that cannot happen. So you can only have healing if you give the space for it. Right. So I don't really understand sometimes what my emotions are trying to tell me, how much I am supposed to give. It says no more holding back, all right? It says no more holding back. But what does that mean? So, you know, right now, for instance, you know, I can create a lot of content. I can do this all the time. But the question is, why should I do that? Because if I don't get anything back, because that's what love is, right? You want to give, and so you give. Because other people might reject your love, but that's their problem. You're still gonna give it. You know, that's what it's about. You have something to give, then you give it. You don't hold back because someone doesn't want it. You say, you know, I'm gonna give it anyway, whether you want it or not, you know. And that's the weird thing where trust comes in, because yeah, maybe your job is to give love and you're worried that you're never going to earn money with this. And then you keep giving it, and you realize if you keep giving love to the people, they will take it at one point. You just have to be patient enough. Just bide your time and keep feeding them. At one point they will want it. But then you're already at the point where you say, you know, I don't necessarily need something back, but it certainly would be nice to get something once in a while. But if that's not coming, then you just have to give it yourself. And that's a very strange thing. Like a really strange thing. It's a very, very strange thing when you realize you can simply give it. But sometimes I also get to this point. Oh my God. And sometimes you have to, if you want to harmonize the environment that love is supposed to happen in, first of all, people have to get rid of their tension. And that means they have to let out their emotions, because they don't manage to do that on their own. And that's a very weird and scary process. But if you're the one that's conscious about it, that means you're the one that has to take responsibility for it. Because if you're the one that's seeing it, maybe you see what needs to be done, but you're too selfish to do it. Well, then it's gonna stay the way it is. And then you are the one that is responsible for it. And you cannot say anymore, yeah, well, that's their own problem, because it isn't. Because you're the one that life gave the gift of sight. And then you have to decide, are you going to take the responsibility? Or what are you going to do with it? So I simply said, apparently I am the one that can love, so why am I holding back for? Because I was stuck on receiving love. If you're stuck on receiving love, you won't get it. love. So you have to give love to get it. You should first feed them, and then they're going to give you back. And maybe they're going to give you back because they start buying your books. Or maybe they're going to give you back because, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. And what I see is that people need a lot of love first. And that takes a lot of time. In relationships these days, women are really screwed, men are really screwed. We are all at the end. So some of us need to be really strong now. Harmonizes the environment and creates the room in which healing can take shape. But yeah, it certainly shouldn't be about, because some people, they get a rush out of pressing others down, right? They get a rush out of denying people love because then they feel like they're in charge. So they actually control people with fear. And the only people who do that are the people that are afraid. And that's simply something you have to understand. If you live with people that are in fear, they will try to control you. And when you want to love, you have to be free with your love. And that means no control. I don't explain to people, right? When I go to someone and I simply sit down with them and they start screaming at me, and then people come and say, oh, what was that about? Why did you do that for? No, I don't explain this to them because they don't understand it. They're just trying to keep me in check, to control me. They cannot control love. They're trying to, and so they come to me and they want me to explain what I just did. They cannot explain this to someone who lives in fear. And I was very often already at the point where people came to me and they wanted to ask me, what are you doing? And I said, I cannot explain this to you. But what I'm doing is love. And love is different from what most people think it is, because love is a challenge. And you either accept the challenge or you reject the challenge. And that's basically all there is to it. You accept the challenge or you reject the challenge. If you reject it, then you will keep living in fear. And if you accept it, well, then you accept it, right? When you accept it, you accept it. And so I realized that I can. Right? I realized, oh wow, this is a challenge I can actually win it. I can win at love. It's a very strange thing to say. I'm just saying, right? It's a very strange thing to say, oh, I can win at love. What does that mean? Well, it means that I can actually do this. Which is something that a lot of people can't. Because they are afraid. Because in order to love, you have to let go many times. Many times. And letting go, sure, feels a bit like dying. letting go feels a bit like dying. And that's the truth. And dying is a scary process. And what does that tell you? Well, what it tells me is that only a person who has trust can let go into love. Because you have to see love as something else than maybe the way you've been seeing it all this time. You see love as, love in its entirety is the ocean. And you are a particle of water in a river. Or you are the river, and you want to get back to the ocean. You want to be connected to the ocean. So first you have to journey to the ocean of self, right? And that's why this image is called Journey to the Ocean of Self. So you see love. What is love then? Let's just say love is everything. Love is the primordial essence, the soup of the universe. That's where everything came out of. It starts with a lot of love, and that's like life comes out of it. This is part of it. So in order to see love for what it truly is, you have to look at it. You have to look at life. And life is sometimes really messy. I mean, there are all kinds of seemingly weird things living, like entities. I like to see beings as beings without labeling them. They're all beings. A rock is a being that lives in a very different space-time than a human, right? So now we're already in the area of labels. When I say racism, right? It's racist to see a rock as something different from what you are. And it's racist to see a dog as an animal and then say you're different than I am. Everybody is the same and everything is the same. And that's when we come to the topic of oneness. It's all one. And that means if you are in a room with your beloved, whether that is a man or a woman or a mother or a father, and they scream at you and you scream back, then what is oneness? I mean, you're screaming at yourself, right? Why do you do that? Let the other one scream if they want. I mean, let them scream if they want to. It doesn't have to be, what are you screaming about? You're screaming about that you're being screamed at. But why are you being screamed at? It's actually not you they're screaming at. It's just because you are there to love them. They can scream. You can actually scream them. Because you love them. But if they want to love you, they first have to scream. You get that? It's the boundary. It's the barrier that keeps them from loving you. It's their fear. So when they can scream at you and you still love them, well, then you just took away their fear, right? If they can just keep treating you with silence, and you still love them, then they will realize, damn it, I cannot get away from that guy. And it's a very hard thing to do, believe me, because that means I have to take responsibility not just for my own fear, but also for the fear of the other person. And that's what marriage is about, is it not? That if you say, I love this woman or this man, I love him or her so much that I'll just keep loving her, and just nothing comes back. And then you just keep giving. And that's a really tough thing to do. But that's the thing, right? When you're in duality, you think about love and hate as opposites. But in oneness, you realize it's just the same thing. If somebody screams at you, it's an expression of love, because love is everything there is, because love is energy. You know, love is only a word that's been burdened with so much slime, so much opinion. The word is greasy with hidden meanings. You know, what love is supposed to be. Yeah, parents say they love you, and then they send you to your room, which is the opposite of it. They say they love you, but they send you to your room. It's like that's actually keeping you away from being with them. And that's what I realized, right? As a child, I was often sent to my room. You know, watched a movie together, I started crying, my parents sent me to my room. So love is effort, but it's effortless when you just keep doing it. It's like everything, you have to learn that first. You have to learn to keep doing it. It's very hard for me to send things to my wife, although she just completely ignores me. It's very hard, very hard. And then it sounds a bit like a child, right? You can say, I love you anyway. And it's also a bit cute, right? It loses a bit its seriousness. But to me, sometimes you have to be a bit pompous. But you just say something, it actually doesn't matter, just whatever you feel like. I mean, you can say things like, your silence is the source of my strength. Because sometimes it also takes love to love. It takes silence to love. And if you can love someone in silence, it actually also gives you stability. But if you, like, always to take your own position in this. But my position is, we are in different places right now. What does that mean? Like, I don't see her. I don't know what she does. My heart says, I love you. And I feel connected to her like I've never felt with anybody. But what does that mean? Yes, sometimes it's just about looking at the problem. So, for instance, you feel like you're very lazy. You feel like you're very tired. You feel like you have no love to give. Well, one thing I learned is that what you can do is you can stop sitting. I mean, you can keep watching movies, but just realize that what is draining you is not your partner, it's your smartphone, it's watching movies, it's other people. And so I talk very little because this is a way of saving energy. So you save the energy for things that are important. So instead of going to the city and saying hello to everybody, you just stay silent. You say nothing. You can nod at people. You don't shake hands. You don't hug others. So you carry your love inside of your heart. And you always make sure to bring it back to your wife. You make sure to bring it back to your children, because that's what you have to do it. So partly, sure, you love your wife, and the love that goes into your wife goes into your children. And that's what we should focus on, right? You know, I love my wife, and she passes it on to my children, but I also love my children. But, you know, as a husband, you love your wife, and the love goes into the wife and then into the child. That's how you feed a new generation of humans, so to speak, that grow up in love rather than fear. Because a lot of men, they're afraid of love, they can't love, but they decide not to because they're selfish and they think they just have to earn money. So they hold back on the love, because actually love, because like I said, it's not love, is just a word and it sounds really stupid. Like the word love in general, it's just a very stupid word. Because things like Valentine's Day just have ruined it. People say love is soft, but actually love is... Love is actually stability. Love is energy. And so in order to channel, you see how I stand. There's an imbalance in my body. If I stand normally, okay, this side is no, wait, now it's the other way around. This side is hanging lower. Do you know why that is? Because I'm right-handed, or I've been told I'm right-handed. This is my masculine side. This is the side that's like masculinity. You know, it's like penetrating into things, right? That's what porn does, like, that's the male thing. Now my right side is heavy. And so now I started to work on my left side. I've been training that a lot. Juggling helps me with that. Also crochet, but also simply starting to move my left arm more. So I want to work out this imbalance, right? Because if you have an imbalance, you try to force people to love you with violence, right? That's what this masculine system is trying to do, right? It's trying to force you into loving them. And they're trying to do this in all kinds of ways. So they're trying to force you into loving them. They try to force you into loving them. Right? So they make it mandatory. You have to pay tax. Yeah, if you don't pay tax, we're gonna put you into prison. That's like forcing people to love them. If you don't love me, I'm gonna put you into prison. So you better love me. This is the mentality of most people that grew up in this society. So that is kind of where we're coming from. And so you come into a relationship with a woman or a man, and you love them like a lot, or you want their love, you want their love, and then if you don't get it, you're gonna pick a fight. Yeah, your husband comes home and you really need his love, and you think he's not gonna give it to you unless you drag it out of him. And so you become hard because I want you to love me. And then your husband comes home or something, right? And you've been alone with the child all day and there's no love in you. And then you want that love and then you attack him. You're late. And then you punish him. You don't make him food. If you don't love me, I'm gonna hate you. Yeah, I'm gonna do everything that you hate. I'm going to order food. I'm gonna hold back on my love because you don't give me any. Yeah, that's how people are in relationships. If you don't give me love, I'm not gonna give you love either. Well, then you're not gonna get love. Because when you love, then you love, and then it's flowing. And then you're also gonna get love. But if nobody does the loving, then you're just stuck in hate and in fear. So if you realize that your partner cannot love you more than he loves himself, what does that mean? That you have to love your partner extra hard. And first you have to understand where you stand in this. And that takes a lot of time. Because I had no love for myself, but I realized that people still wanted my love, and I never understood this. I thought, why do you want my love for? Just can't you give it to yourself? And the truth is, no, they cannot. Because I can. But I first had to start loving myself, right? I first had to start loving myself, and that took a lot of practice and a lot of healing and a lot of suffering. But I deliberately continued to suffer because I realized, all right, I can actually do this. I can do this. I can go to these places and I can shine light on them. And so when I live with people, sometimes I do things. I don't really, somehow I do them because my feeling tells me, do this! And then I go there and I do it and suddenly somebody's screaming at me and all I have to do is sit there and just let them scream. I don't even have to listen to what they're saying. I mean, I'm paying attention to them while they're screaming. Because sometimes people scream actually because nobody sees them and they cannot see themselves anymore. So you have to show them once in a while, this is how you are right now, man. You're really angry. Oh yeah. But you don't mirror them anger, you mirror them love. I love you anyway, so what's the big deal? Scream all you want. And that's what happened. And I've had this already many times, and I've always thought if somebody screams at me, there's something wrong with me, but they needed my strength. So they needed to scream at me. They were afraid to do so because they thought if they would scream at me, I would leave them. But it's actually the other way around, because I know if I allow people to scream at me sometimes, it's like Jesus being nailed to the cross, right? You don't take the blame. You make sure that they understand it's not your fault. So that's my standpoint. I don't let people nail me to the cross. Because what is Christ? It's consciousness. It's a state of mind that is in your heart. That's what Christ is about. It's like being centered in the heart. It's the Christ consciousness, if you want to call it that. So we say Jesus Christ. It's complete bullshit. It's not Jesus Christ. It's Jesus. It's the guy. And then there's Christ. And Christ is Christ consciousness. It's basically love. It's the human form, the emissionary, the avatar that comes into the realm of the world and promotes love as a spiritual practice, so to speak. So I have to live among devils. This is really how it is. You have to live here among all kinds of weird shit. You have to live here amongst devils and snake beings and energetic leeches and all that kind of shit. And you have to find some people that you really want to love, and then you simply love them. Yeah. But all to their own. Like, you can't love. There are certain people, beings, that you will love more. For some people, it's maybe a dog. They really love that dog. They don't really know why. And so some people, it's certain people. So, for example, I cannot give more love to my sister, for instance, than I give to my wife. So my wife should be my priority. And I cannot love my mother more than I love my wife because, it has to move on. If I love my wife less because I think I have to give love to my mother, then how can I give love to my family that matters at the moment, which is the next generation? Because we're moving on, right? It's about letting go to move on. And so some people, they try to force love out of you. And they will manage. They will manage. They will manage to force love out of you. And so it's your choice who you give your love to. And some people, they give all their love to their parents, and then they have no love for their wives or husbands. Sometimes you see it. I really don't like this. It's like people, they go out and then they're friendly to everyone, but as soon as they get back home, they're like, eh. So you just have to outgrow this shit. Because if you could keep reacting to your partner, how they're reacting to you, you will never get out of this. It takes courage and strength to grow. It takes courage and strength to grow and to learn how to love more. And that's basically the mission, right? The emissionary of love, Christ, the consciousness. If you want to invite that into your life, you have to open up to the idea and the possibility that things are indeed different from what you thought. And I did write a book about this. It's called Totally Misunderstood: The Language of Emotions. But I also talked about it in Being in Love. It's on Medium and articles, also on my website, I think, in the blog section. So it's all about balance also, and to learn to grow. Yeah, so some people, they will listen to what I say, they won't get it. It's up to you. Because the only reason why I can't talk about these things is because I just made a lot of experiences and I reflected onto these experiences something. Apparently, myself, how do I feel about what's happening? How important is this relationship to me? Do I really want to invest in it? Even though I feel like I get nothing back, but right, sometimes you simply have to give. Because nature is a good example. She keeps giving, and we take it. That's the loving mother that keeps giving to humanity, although humanity just takes a piss on her. And so you have to sometimes love somebody until they realize, all right, let's just love, right? And that is the challenge. That is the challenge.